Before we begin, I just want to acknowledge that we're meeting on the traditional, ancestral, unceded territories of the First Nations and Native American peoples. Here where I am in Vancouver, those peoples are the Coast Salish, the Musqueam, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Stolo nations. But I know where you are, you're probably on the land of other nations. Always, but especially in this difficult year, we think about our brothers and sisters on these nations, and we pray for the day in which we might be in right relationship. Welcome. Welcome to Living Interfaith. Know that the whole of you is welcome. You're not asked to leave who you are in your own home. Please bring who you are in with you. But what you are asked to remember is that everyone around you has brought who they are in with themselves as well. And all of goodwill are welcome. Bruce and Cheryl? Beautiful. Thank you so much. We have just a few announcements. The first is Happy Hanukkah to our Jewish friends. This, I believe, is their second or third day, so that's very exciting. It's a great time to light as many candles rather than curse the darkness, as Stephen always says. So happy Hanukkah to them. We have a council meeting today after our service. Everyone is welcome to attend. We promise it'll only be like an hour long or so it will not continue forever. One of my professors just said he has a congregation about this size, and they had a 3-hour meeting, which gave everyone about 10 minutes. And I promise we will not go that long. So you are welcome to stay if you want, but you don't have to. We are still selling our multi-faith calendar, the Multi-Faith Action Society. As I've showed you before, if you have not yet seen it, it looks like this. It is very beautiful. The artwork is going to be like this. This will be for the new year. And the cool thing, this is a beautiful calendar. It's really quite remarkable. And then it always has about 500 holidays in it for every religion you can imagine, and every special occasion, and then an explanation of all of those, and then information at the back of it about the different religions. So it's both an amazing teaching tool and something really fun if you have friends from different traditions, which I know we all do, so you know what people are celebrating at a given time. So if you're interested, you can, they're $15. You can get them on the website, or I've had some folks send me money through Interac and then I just mail it to them. So whatever makes sense if you are interested. This coming Friday, December 18th at 7 o'clock, there's going to be an online Christmas concert that's put together by some of the folks from the Surrey Interfaith Council. It'll have lots of talented Christian folks from around the Lower Mainland, and I know they're going to be streaming, and it looks really beautiful. I included the link in our last email, but I could also send it to you if you're interested. So just let me know. And then everyone who I remembered, so I'm sorry if I missed anybody, I sent an email yesterday seeing if folks maybe wanted to be included in a kind of community directory that we have, so that especially right now when it's the holidays and we're all isolated, so we have some way to stay in touch with each other, because otherwise you'll meet in the services and maybe be interested in something someone's saying, but then not know how to actually reach out to that person. So if you would like to be included in that, please let me know. And also I asked if folks wanted to share their birthday, not the year if they don't want to, but the birthday itself, so we can wish you happy birthday when the time comes. So yeah, just let me know if you're interested. So I think that's it for me with announcements. Does anybody have any other announcements? Okay, thank you very much. Let's come into silence for a moment. We'll do our opening prayer. In order that we may be skilled in discerning what is good, in order that we may understand the path to peace, let us be able, upright and straightforward, of good speech, gentle and free from pride. Let us be contented, easily satisfied, having few duties, living simply, of controlled senses, prudent and without pride, and without attachment to nation, race, or any other groups. Let us not do the slightest thing for which the wise might rebuke us. Instead, let us wish that all beings be well and safe, that they be at ease. Whatever living beings there may be, whether moving or standing still, without exception, whether large, great, middling, or small, whether tiny or substantial, whether seen or unseen, whether living near or far, born or unborn, may all beings be happy. Let none deceive or despise another anywhere. Let none wish harm to another in anger or hatred, just as a mother would guard her child, her only child, with her own life. Even so, let us cultivate a boundless mind for all beings in the world. Let us cultivate a boundless love for all beings in the world, above, below, and across, unhindered, without ill will or enmity. Through this candle, for us and all other beings, infinite in number, may the darkness of ignorance and delusion be banished entirely, so that we may behold the light of omniscient wisdom. And now if folks would like to unmute themselves, we can do a passing of the peace. This is when we all just share peace. Say something like, peace be with you as well. Assalamu alaikum wa alaikum assalam. Peace, everyone. Good morning.
Peace to you as well.
Be with you, all of you.
Everyone.
Peace.
Peace be with you.
Peace be with you.
Shalom. Peace. Assalamu alaikum.
Like that, Daddy.
Be well.
Shalom, Stephen.
Daddy, you like that, right?
Peace, my friends.
Peace to you all.
Peace be with you.
May all live in harmony.
Bruce and Cheryl.
Om Mani
Thank you so much. My kids definitely know that mantra because that's the Buddhist mantra of compassion. So whenever you want to wish good wishes on someone, or you see anything dying or in pain or suffering in any way, that's what you say. So they say that to all the little bugs in our house. So that was great. Thank you. Now, if you'll join me in our joint affirmation. We come together
In peace. We sing together in joy.
And with love. We worship together in one house, a house with names beyond number. Our paths are many, our beliefs are as leaves, and the tree that we cleave to is nourished by the light of compassion, justice, and mutual respect. May our lives, our beliefs, and our actions help to bring about the world of love we all seek, and let it begin here. Thank you. Now is when we take a few moments just to pray in our own homes and in our own way for something in the world. As always, there are so many things we could be praying for, but I've been seeing the very scary number of rising cases of COVID around the world, and especially right now in the United States, which is losing about 3,000 people a day to COVID at this time. So if we could pray for the people who are sick and their families and those who are grieving, that they may be comforted, that they may be healed, and that they may know they're not alone during this time. Let's pray for them now. Thank you. Bruce and Cheryl.
This is the mantra that the Dalai Lama tells us is a good one for chanting during the pandemic. Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. 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 Om Tare Tu Tare
Beautiful. Thank you so much. And now is when we usually pass around a basket. Instead of that, I'll just put our donation link in the chat. And then I know many of you do donate to us, which we are very, very grateful for. So thank you so much. That helps keep this going and helps pay our wonderful, fantastic musicians and keep everything chugging along here. So thank you. And then if there are any other causes that also need some support and donations at this time, would you like to mention them or put them in the chat as well? Thank you. I know food banks in all your communities could really use it this year. Lots of folks are really relying on food banks. So if you do have some extra, that would be really good. So thank you. Bruce and Cheryl.
Oh, and also Science World.
From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we live. From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we live. From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we live.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. So yes, happy Bodhi Day, everyone. So Bodhi Day is the Mahayana holiday that celebrates when the historic Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama, reached enlightenment. So in the Zen tradition, this is known as Rohatsu, which just directly translates to the 8th day of the 12th month, which is December 8th. So all Mahayana folks always celebrate this as the day the Buddha reached enlightenment. So it's just this last Tuesday. So I don't know if you're familiar with this. So there are two main branches in Buddhism. There's the Mahayana tradition and the Theravada tradition. I myself am a Mahayana Buddhist, and we all have different holidays. And it's actually even a little more complicated because often they'll say like within a given week, different countries will celebrate the holidays on a different day. So it's sort of like in this general time period, there will be such and such a holiday. The Theravada Buddhists usually celebrate the Buddha's birth, enlightenment, and death all in one day. And that's actually Vesak. That's the biggest Buddhist holiday. And we have celebrated that before. Back pre-COVID days when you could meet in person, you all might remember that because we got together and we had a birthday cake and we sung happy birthday to the Buddha. So that was very fun. And we did the thing where you pour water over a statue of the Buddha to cleanse your karma. So, and that's for Vesak, and that's more of a Theravada thing. Mahayana Buddhists, we like our holidays. So we break them all up into different ones. So there's the one for the birth of the Buddha, the Buddha's birthday, and that's also around the same time as Vesak. But then there's also when the Buddha died, Parinirvana Day, which is usually in mid-February sometime. And then there's this one, which is when the Buddha reached enlightenment. And these three occasions are very important in Buddhism. You'll actually see, I think I haven't been to this one temple. It's in India, but it actually shows like on one whole wall, it has a mural like scenes from when the Buddha was born. And another one is scenes from when he reached enlightenment. And then another one is when he died. And sometimes you'll have a fourth one added, which is when he gave his first sermon in the deer park. And these are all in different locations. He was born in Lumbini, which is just over the border from India in Nepal. So that is just slightly out of India, but the other ones are all in different parts of North India. And I've only been to two of those. I've been to, Samir and I went to Bodh Gaya, where the Buddha reached enlightenment, and we got to meditate under the Bodhi tree, which is why it's called Bodhi Day, because he was meditating under the Bodhi tree. And then we went to the deer park in Sarnath, which is just outside Varanasi. And Varanasi is the holiest Hindu site. So and it makes sense since the Buddha came from that same kind of grouping of, before Hinduism was sort of compiled and thought of as one religion. So Varanasi is very important. So Sarnath, where he first preached, is right outside there. But otherwise, Bodhi and Bodhinath are very, very important. And lots of Buddhists make annual pilgrimages there, including the Dalai Lama. So then the actual story, if you all know, is the Buddha was a prince. So he was born again in Lumbini in North Nepal. And there's sort of a historic Buddha kind of exploration being done that says this may not be totally true. But the way the story goes is that he was born to a king and he was a prince. And unfortunately, his mother passed away just a few days after he was born. So his father really wanted to protect him, was very close to his son and wanted to protect him. And they had all the riches and all the power imaginable in this area. So his father had heard a prophecy that the Buddha would either be a great king or he would be a great holy man. And he wanted him to be a great king like himself, as he imagined himself to be. So he tried to hide away all suffering from the Buddha, so he didn't experience any of it. So he kept him within the city walls, within the palace walls, so he wouldn't go outside, and there was kind of this control of what he got to experience. And he got all the entertainment he could want, all the education he could want. He got whatever he wanted, so long as it had nothing to do with suffering and it kept him happy and kind of prepared him for this kingship. And finally, when he got a little older, he was already married, he decided he wanted to leave and go outside the city walls. And so he went on a trip with some people in a carriage. And once he went outside, he saw that life outside is not the same as it was in the palace. And he saw, they're called the four sights. So he saw a sick man, an old man, a corpse, and then a holy man. So he saw the four ways that there is suffering. So with sickness that comes to all of us, with old age that eventually comes for all of us, with death that comes for all of us. And he was so taken aback by this. He had no idea that these existed. In his education, these were not part of what he was learning about. And he was so distraught. And then he saw a holy man, Sadhu, who is a sort of ascetic who was meditating. And he wanted to know what that person was doing. And that person seemed so different from everyone else. And they said, oh, well, he's trying to get past all this, to get out of the cycle of suffering. So the Buddha got very interested in that. And much to his father's dismay, and I feel very bad for his wife. He was married and had a young son, and he left them. Actually, I have problems with that, but he left them and left the city walls and became an ascetic. And he wandered with an ascetic group and actually became sort of a leader and did this for 6 years. And at that time, it was very common for folks to almost starve themselves. So he rarely ate. I don't know how factual this is, but they say he used to eat like 1 grain of rice a day, like just one thing. He was mostly naked or wore like a sack, and his hair grew long and dirty. He barely bathed and was trying to sort of be in that kind of lifestyle to understand why there's so much suffering. And it wasn't really helping. He wasn't really getting anywhere with it, even though he had this small following of 4 people who were with him. And so eventually he realized he was starving to death. And he was either going to die like that or he needed a new plan. And so he started out with this kind of unbelievable luxury. And then he had the opposite of that for 6 years. And so he thought about, what if I do something in between, which is what the Buddhists call the middle way, something between starving yourself and indulging yourself excessively. So he left this group and his followers left. And he met Sujata, who was a young girl who thought he was a tree spirit because he was out in the forest meditating and he looked like he was going to die. And she fed him kheer, which is rice mixed with milk. It's kind of like rice pudding. And that sustained him. And she's still honored. There's a temple dedicated to her because she helped keep him alive. And actually, I should say, sometimes you'll see all these different statues of the Buddha. And a popular one is where you can see his ribs, and he looks very emaciated and kind of sunken eyes. But he has the big ears, if you've seen this, like big earlobes that come down with big holes. And that's because back when he had all the wealth, he could have big earrings. so that could pull his ears down. So that image is kind of him in the pinnacle of both of those, with like the former wealth that caused his ears to be like that, but also starving to death now. And he's like caught in between these two extremes. And so once he got the cure from Sujata, he sat under the Bodhi tree in what is now Bodhinath. And he said, I'm not leaving until I figure this out. And so he did. And the story is he sat there for 49 days. I guess he'd eaten a lot. I guess Sujata really helped him out because he didn't starve to death. So he had a bunch of kheer, which is very delicious. I don't blame him. And then he sat for 49 days. And it's probably 49 because that's 7 times 7. And 7 is a very auspicious number. So for 7 weeks straight, he sat under the Bodhi tree. And Mara came to him. And so Mara is kind of like the Buddhist Satan, but he's not scary like Satan is in the Christian tradition. So Mara is more of a buffoon, like he's kind of comical. And so over that time, he would come to him. And Mara represents what are called the 3 poisons. So the 3 negative elements in Buddhism are hatred, attachment or clinging, and also greed. It's often called greed, and delusion. So it's either you want too much of something, you don't want anything at all, or you have this delusion about how things work. And so Mara kind of represents all of those. But he has this kind of comical villain thing going on. So the idea is like Mara's back behind the trees and he sees the Buddha meditating and he's like, we can't have this because, he's in my world now. And if he gets out of this, if he figures out some way out of samsara, the cycle of endless suffering, then he won't be under my control. So I need a plan. So Mara would send his different daughters to him and his different armies to him. And so one is like anger, like, okay, I'm going to send anger to him and see if I can like figure out how to make him upset. And if you've ever meditated and been distracted, which I'm sure all of us have at one time or another, we're familiar with Mara. And that's what Mara does, right? Because he's a kind of psychological element where you're like sitting there and suddenly you think about like, hey, that thing happened and that person was really rude to me. And I'm kind of mad about that. And then you're not meditating at all. You're kind of off and you're reenacting this thing. So that's like one of Mara's daughters comes in and tries to make him mad. And the Buddha just kind of laughs and is like, I see you, Mara. And Mara's like, he figured it out. Okay, I need a new plan. Need a new daughter. Okay, I'm going to send Lust. So we'll get in there and we'll distract him completely. He'll be caught up in passion. He'll stop meditating. The Buddha's like, no, I see you, Mara. He's like, that didn't work. And so he's sending all these ones. He's going to send fear. He's going to send all these things to kind of distract him. And none of them are working. And the Buddha keeps meditating. And finally, Mara gets so mad. And this is on the last night. And he's like, how dare you? Like, who are you to do all of this? To think that you can escape suffering? Like, look, I have all this control. Like, look at my witness. Who's my witness that I'm the one in charge of all this? And Mara sort of like, harkens back to all his armies. And the armies roar like, we are your witness. And the Buddha just softly smiles. And you'll see the statue where he's sitting in the lotus position and he has one hand and he touches the ground. And he says, the earth is my witness. And the earth roars back like we are the witness. And it scares Mara. And Mara and the armies all go running away. And they disappear. And that's the last thing that happens. Suddenly the Buddha opens his eyes. He looks up. He sees the morning star. It's just the beginning of the morning. And he reaches enlightenment. So that's what we're celebrating. And so I love that idea of the earth being the witness. I actually preached on this at VST once because there's a passage in the Tanakh when God says, you are not following my way and I'm going to call the earth as a witness against you. And I was like, no, that's so interesting. What does that mean? That the earth can either be the witness against you or the witness for you? And I was very interested and I kind of preached on that dichotomy. And so I think in this, it gets interpreted different ways. So I think one of the reasons the earth witnesses for the Buddha is because it's attesting to everything he's done in his countless lifetimes. So there are all these different stories of him. In one lifetime, he was a turtle. And in that lifetime, he helped save people from drowning. And in another lifetime, he was walking, he was a boy, I think, and he was walking in the forest and he saw a mother tiger who was starving. and who didn't have any food for her children. And so he offered his body. He gave himself up, even though he knew that he'd die, so he could feed this tiger family. And then in one lifetime, he actually killed someone, which is the only time that happened, I believe, although Harold might know better than me, where he was on a ferry boat, and there were 500 bodhisattvas, or like Buddhist saints, wonderful people who were doing all this good work on the boat. And there was one robber who was going to sink the boat and kill them. And so he actually killed the robber, but not for himself, for the sake of the 500 bodhisattvas. So even though you would normally never kill, he did that one time for them. And so that also helped him achieve greater merit. So the earth had attested that each time he'd done all this for the other beings, both the animals and the humans. And so in that way, it would witness for him. But I think the other reason, another interpretation of why the earth witnessed for him, is because the Buddhist idea is so rooted in the earth. It's so rooted in the way things are. And if you notice, it wasn't that he called on the angels. It wasn't like an angel or godly figure who came down to attest for him. Even, Mara had these supernatural or like psychological kind of things that were attesting for him. Whereas for the Buddha, it was the earth itself. And I think that's because there is that in the middle way, it's very grounded in now. Like sometimes folks will ask, and they'd ask the Buddha, where does everything come from? Like, what's the idea of God or the creation? Like, where's everything from? And I love it. He said, asking that and focusing on that, it's like getting shot in the leg with an arrow, where you have all this pain and suffering, but you refuse to take the arrow out until you've counted how many feathers are on it. So like, why would we focus all our attention on like cosmology and on all these big heavenly different things when there's so much suffering in our life now on a day-to-day basis? How can we alleviate each other's suffering? How can we alleviate our own suffering? How can we grow in love and wisdom in a very grounded earthly way and not be focused on these other kind of bigger things right now? So I think that's also part of why the earth was what witnessed for him. I was thinking about this recently when we were hiking in the Pacific Spirit Park. Samir blessedly had the kids for a while, and I had some time to just sort of meditate there. And I was looking at this scene, and it's like a scene in any forest where you have some huge trees that have obviously been there, I have no idea, like 200 years, probably longer. And then you have some new little saplings, and you have some moss, and you have some mushrooms, and you have nurse logs where you had these big trees that fell over, and then you have new little trees growing out of them and plants growing out of them. And you have kind of a swamp area in the back. And I was looking at this and I was like, isn't this so interesting? This is kind of like how humanity is, actually, where you have people who've been around for a long time who are like these great trees, where they're like these great leaders and they've done all this. And they're like, you can never imagine them dying or going away, or these big human institutions, or like, like the Parthenon or something, these things that seem like they've been there forever. But then if you keep looking, you see that some of those eventually fell down and went away, but they didn't just disappear. And that's the thing, like in this ecosystem of the earth and of humanity, things don't just disappear, even if we want them to. They grow, and some of them get really, really big and seem powerful and seem like they're going to last forever, but they don't, not in that way. So everything lasts forever, but not in that way. So eventually things collapse, but then new life grows out of them. And you have this intermix of the life and death mixed together. And so saying, I'll only be happy if this person, this tree, lives forever and never falls down, that's a kind of delusion. That's a really understandable, totally heartfelt delusion, but that's a kind of delusion, because if you look at the world, it doesn't work like that. But it also doesn't go away. So if you have that kind of attachment, the bad part is it's not going to last like that. But the good part is it's also not like the giant tree or the flowers that you're attached to, or these particular plants or anything. It's not like they die and then they go away and they're gone forever. Instead, it's like they die, but then they get reborn. right in the midst. Like as soon as they're falling, you have new leaves, you have new things coming up. Thich Nhat Hanh said he was meditating and he saw a little leaf that was in the shape of a heart. And he was talking to the leaf and it was going to fall. This was in the autumn time. And he asked it if it was scared of falling. And it said it wasn't scared of falling because it had been born. It was a part of this tree. And it had spent all spring growing and then all summer helping sustain this tree and grow this big tree. And then it knew when it fell, it was going to go back into the earth underneath the tree and then become part of the fertilizer and feed the tree and go back into the tree. And then he imagined as he watched it fall, that it's falling down and it's waving to the tree and saying, I'm going to be a part of you again. And that's how it works. So I think that if you see that, it makes some things really sad, because then there's that realization that nothing is going to last in the way that we want it to necessarily. But it makes other things really hopeful, because they're not going to go away either. And some things are, we don't like at all. And then we might have the poison of aversion, of that kind of hatred and wanting them to disappear. But that won't happen either. But I know Dorley and I have talked about how mushrooms are surprisingly inspiring, that they're discovering that mushrooms have this kind of alchemy quality, that you can plant them where there's even been radioactive activity, where there have been oil spills, where there's toxicity. And mushrooms are able to take even that kind of dangerous stuff and turn it back into life and turn it back, because it won't go away. None of these things go away. So I think if we just think about that and have that kind of, that's where Michael Newton, my teacher, he says that Buddhism is based on the twin virtues of wisdom and compassion, and that they're like the wings of a bird. And the bird can't fly unless it has both of them. And that's where I think the wisdom is in knowing that all the things will pass away. But the compassion is knowing that they'll still be a part and they're going to come back in a different form. So if we hold those, that's that middle way, right? Between the starving aesthetic and then the unbelievable luxury that never goes away. And then finally, I'll just leave you all week. I've had this koan going around in my head. It's very small. It's from a Japanese poet where he said, "Barn burnt down. Now I can see the moon." And I think it's just so beautiful. And then in Buddhist thought, the barn doesn't burn down because you're bad or because the barn is bad. And it doesn't burn down because you deserve to have your barn burned down. But since it burns down, what's the good thing that can come out of it? Maybe you can see the moon. Maybe you can have something good, because when something goes away, it gets replaced by something else. And maybe that'll be a good thing. And if we have that kind of openness and non-clinging and just holding things in that kind of open-hearted kind of way, then that's what it means to awaken. So maybe that's what we're celebrating today, that open-heartedness. So thank you all so much, and happy Bodhi Day. Bruce and Cheryl. Thank you so much. Just have one final prayer before we'll close our eyes. Just as the soft rains fill the streams, pour into the rivers, and join together in the oceans, so may the power of every moment of our goodness flow forth to awaken and heal all beings, those here now, those gone before, those yet to come. By the power of every moment of our goodness, may our heart's wishes soon be fulfilled, as completely shining as the bright full moon, as magically as by a wish-fulfilling gem. May all dangers be averted and all disease be gone. May no obstacle come across our way. May we enjoy fulfillment and long life. For all in whose heart dwells respect, who follow the ways of wisdom and compassion, may our lives prosper in the four blessings of old age, beauty, happiness, and strength. And may we use these blessings to help all beings cross over to the other shore. Thank you.